I don't think, parents were often thinking about how do I talk to my daughter in the 90s about diet culture. I mean, they were just
No,
entrenched in it.
that's like thinking you could see air. Like we were not, nobody said diet culture in the 90s.
Right,
No, it
right.
wasn't a term.
I mean, yes, there's a cultural disappearing that we're all naming. But I think parents are a lot more aware of the need to have these conversations.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident. Over the last few years, it's become impossible to ignore the shrinking size of celebrities and influencers. Threading the needle of expressing concern without causing harm can be difficult, but what harm might we cause if we say nothing at all? To discuss how we talk about weight online, we're joined by licensed psychologist Dr. Vanessa Scaringi and Angelina Chapman, features writer at The Cut. Hey, it's been a minute, watchers. We are so glad that you are enjoying our show on YouTube, but we'd like to learn a little bit more about you. So could you help us out by taking a short, anonymous survey? It takes less than 5 minutes, and it will really go a long way in making better shows for you. The survey is at n.pr/IBAM. That's IBAM. The link will also be in our episode description below. Thank you so much. Vanessa, Angelina, welcome to It's Been a Minute.
Thanks for having us.
So nice to be here.
I'm happy to have you both here. This is a really important topic, and I'm excited to have both of your minds on it. So to start things off, when did you first notice that celebrity women's bodies were overall trending smaller? Angelina, we'll start with you.
So I think for me, it was post-COVID, like post-real lockdowns. We saw Ozempic being talked about more. Like, I think that's when we first started, us in the mainstream started to hear this drug exists. It's sort of this celebrity elixir. I remember then moments sort of in dribs and drabs, like, oh, Amy Schumer's there and she's a lot more thin and she's talking about liposuction. And then there was the Wicked press tour for the first movie. That obviously brought up a lot of dialogue around Ariana's weight. I think there was a season 3 of Emily in Paris sometime in that period. Like, it just felt like a bit of a curtain open, and now we're in the world and people are looking a little different. So I'm not sure I clocked it as like just thinness necessarily, but end of last year, it really just felt like the red carpet is a parade of skeletons. That's how I felt. Just looking at these images, boom, 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 boom. Everyone just looked a lot more thin, and that's when it felt like sort of a trend worth naming for me.
And Vanessa, like, had you noticed this as well?
Yeah, I mean, clinically, absolutely. I think, eating disorders were on the rise during COVID even. But I do, I pay attention to some of the celebrity stuff as well. And obviously the introduction of Ozempic was like a game changer. And I remember Kim Kardashian's Met Gala reveal of like when she lost a bunch of weight to fit into the Marilyn Monroe dress.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling like, okay, now we're talking about weight loss publicly again in a kind of a gross way.
Yeah, I was born in the late 80s, so I lived through the 90s as a girl child, and then was a teenager in the early 2000s. So I feel like a lot of my formative years were kind of shaped by talking about weight, I think, in the way that you're discussing, Vanessa, like in a very obvious, very blatant, not couched at all manner, where the underlying assumption is that thinner is better. The underlying assumption, also the pretty overt assumption, is that thinner is better. But I noticed that sort of change in the way that people, not just celebrities, but everyday people, and even everyday people talking about celebrities, had kind of trended back in that direction, where, again, the assumption is that smaller is better, thin is better. It felt like a kind of reversal. It felt really different than the previous sort of years. I wonder, like, when did you both realize that the rest of America was also noticing this kind of shift in, I guess, body trends, which is a bizarre phrase, but it seems like it applies.
Well, I spend so much time online for my job, for better for worse. A lot
Same.
of time on Reddit, a lot of time in comment sections. So I really started to notice under photos of some of these women, just the comments were like a tone of worry, which I hadn't seen before. Like I was looking last night, Natalia Dyer from Stranger Things, who plays Nancy Wheeler, a photo of her from the red carpet. The first three comments are like, "We're worried about you. This is too thin. Um, are you okay? Are you healthy?" Like it started to be sort of like everyone's now a bit of a doctor, sort of like wanting to maybe diagnose, but also just like that concerned friend, which I'm not used to from online comments, which you tend to think of as like eat a cheeseburger, really nasty sort of bullying. Like even
Yeah.
if you're going to comment on someone being fat or thin, you're going to do it in a mean way. And so I was sort of taken aback that and maybe a little pleasantly surprised that people seemed to be trying to find different ways to engage with this, ways that weren't as sinister or mean girl, and especially with food influencers who I cover as part of my job. There's one in particular. Her Half Baked Harvest is her brand. She was doing a press tour, I think, about a new book, and people were really like expressing a lot of concern. It was like people wanted to dig in, and they were fighting in the comments, and it was this whole dialogue.
Yeah, that I will say the fighting in the comments is something I have seen across different celebrities. Like I've seen a lot of people kind of going back and forth in a way that I'm like, there's a deeper sort of discussion happening here.
I think sort of the big question is how do we talk about women's bodies? Can we talk about women's bodies, especially those of us in a certain generation of feminism were really taught not to say anything. Like it's rude, it's not feminist, regardless of what your comment is. Like keep it to yourself. Don't talk about women's bodies. There's sort of no right answer. And now I'm seeing this shift of people thinking that silence is not okay, is maybe not the most progressive thing, but really fumbling around with how to talk about it. And I'm so curious to hear what Vanessa has to say from like a clinical perspective on that, because I'm sure there's do's and don'ts, and I see people in comment sections like trying their best. I think some people in good faith, but it's tricky, right? It's like how do you talk about something like this? It's really hard.
Yeah, totally. I noticed that there was a lot more frustration with the algorithm, like serving people up certain brands or images. And I know I work with clients that are very intentional with who they follow and how they shape their online presence, and just a massive setback in the sense of like, I think I'm getting served up images that are unhealthy in my recovery process. And now I'm feeling like, wait, what's real? Is this really happening? And so I actually kind of think it's important to be talking about this cultural shift in this way of, having nuanced conversations, because it can feel like, we're being gaslit if we're not talking about it. I had clients really say, like, I feel like I'm going crazy. Are people losing a lot of weight? And is this happening like across the board? It feels like everyone is losing weight all of a sudden. And so just to be able to say, yeah, you're not the only one seeing that, I think can be really validating for someone who's struggling with body image and on some kind of recovery journey. So I saw a lot of frustration with the change.
Obviously celebrity women are in no way representative of all women, but their images do filter down to everyday women, especially young women. Even like you just started to remark, Vanessa, like I'm wondering, like in your practice, how are you seeing that show up?
I think if someone is predisposed to have any kind of disordered eating experience, or if they have body image issues, they're sort of always surveilling the women around them.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of part of the process where they're critical towards themselves, and they tend to be kind of critical or just mindful of others as well. And so I think that they tend to be hyper aware of any kind of change in someone's appearance, especially such dramatic weight loss.
Yeah. I wonder also, Angelina, you interviewed moms who were concerned about their teenage daughters. Like, what did you hear and see talking to them?
These stories were so sad. And I have to say, not even teenage. We're talking like between 6 and 9 years old also. You know, these are, I think for the teenagers, the stories were more around like what Vanessa's saying. Like, this is, my daughter had an eating disorder. She went and saw Wicked, and all of a sudden she's, you know, activated again. She's not eating at Thanksgiving dinner. She's just talking about wanting to lose weight, sort of a slide back into the disordered eating. But for the younger girls, it's sort of, you know, there's not that vocabulary, that awareness necessarily of what an eating disorder is. So it's almost more heartbreaking because you have like a 7-year-old coming home saying, "Mommy, I want my clavicles hollowed out, you know, the way Ariana's looked." And that's so disheartening. You have to start having conversations so much earlier than I think maybe other generations were prepared to.
I mean, I on one hand, yeah, but I mean, even when you just said like you're thinking about you're talking to moms of girls who are some are between the ages of 6 and 9. At first, when I hear that, it breaks my heart. But also, then I think back to being between the ages of 6 and 9, getting the American Girl magazine in the mail or whatever, and seeing how cute and thin the girls on the magazine were. And I also, as a child, was also like quite thin. And also was very cute. I didn't have social media at that point in time. Do you know what I'm saying? I didn't have internet. But it's like, an obsession with being thin and fat phobia are so pervasive in our society. It sounds like 6 to 9 years old. That sounds violent to me. That's so young. But also I think back to being that age. And I certainly remember probably by the time I was probably 9, maybe, or 10, starting to have some awareness of, like the idea of, even as a child, that thinner being better was, an important thing. And I don't think I'm necessarily alone in that. But now, obviously, being 38, I mean, it sounds ludicrous. But, that's the reality of the world that we live in.
And now, I mean, there is sort of a benefit, just to your point, Brittany, about the cultural conversation opening up, that those conversations, I don't think, parents were often thinking about, how do I talk to my daughter in the 90s about diet culture? I mean, they were just entrenched in it.
Yeah. I don't even know. I mean, that's like, like thinking you could see air. Like we were not, nobody said diet culture in the 90s.
Right.
No, it wasn't a term.
No. And so we do have that benefit now. I mean, yes, there's a cultural disappearing that we're all naming. But I think parents are a lot more aware of the need to have these conversations or somehow insulate their families, their children, from images in the best way they can.
I agree with that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just think it's it can feel often with social media like a problem is so much worse, but often it's just because we're naming it and we're talking about it and it's messy, so it's consuming. But obviously, I believe that this is a better alternative than the one we're describing that we probably all relatively grew up in, where it was just like your mom's or your parent is not pulling you aside saying, "Hey, little Angelina, you don't need to look up to this person necessarily, and your body's beautiful the way it is." Like there wasn't the same education around that. So I do think, as messy as this is, it's really good, and to focus on thinness rather than calling Nicole Richie fat or Britney Spears fat or Jessica Simpson fat, which we all lived through in the early aughts.
Yeah.
Like, that's ridiculous. At least we're talking about thinness and how scary it can be.
Right.
We live in a society that puts a lot of pressure on women to look a certain way. So it's not necessarily like, I don't know if it's certainly not my intent to shame any of these women, because I mean, but for the grace of God go I. But both of you also agree that we shouldn't just ignore what we're seeing. So where is the line here? Like how do we differentiate between engaging thoughtfully, right, and discussing these things because they are important? Like we talked about the way that these images trickle down to younger women. They trickle down to grown women as well, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they trickle down to plenty of grown women as well. Like, how do we differentiate between engaging thoughtfully and what could be, considered public shaming or even like abuse to a certain degree of these public figures who are already under a considerable amount of pressure and might already be dealing with health challenges having to do with, how they are trying to maintain their body size.
Yeah, totally. Actually, eating disorders are on the rise in older women, so that's interesting to point that it's not just affecting. Oh yeah, they are seeking, I think, treatment more, so that's good. But yeah, I think having nuanced conversation is like the key. And I'm totally from that, feminist school of thought of we don't talk about other women's bodies. That's not good. And it's part of the work that I do. Like commenting on people's bodies is just like a no-go. We don't do that. And yet I'm finding myself really pulled to want to talk a little bit more about diet culture and the pressures that we're facing and how it's intensified. And so I think zooming out and getting a lot more clear that this is a cultural systemic issue that we're all facing, I think that helps shield some of the shaming. But I've seen, just horrible things. I think I saw Kelly Osbourne talking about the backlash that she was experiencing, and she addressed it. I think that's happening a lot more. Celebrities are saying, can you stop publicly shaming me about my body?
I think back, even you just bringing up Kelly Osbourne, I remember the way people were talking about her 20 years ago when her body was larger.
Right.
She can't win.
Can't win.
Yeah. It's like, I imagine that someone in that position that is, in her specific position, right, where she was like, honestly bullied and harassed by people for being in what they felt was a larger body. And then now where people are expressing concern over what they might feel, her body's looking too thin. I imagine that, like, just as a human being, that's probably a lot to handle.
Oh, yeah. And I think, it's really useful to be talking about, especially to young women. And that's part of the work that I do is like our worth is not about or what we look like. That's just not how we live in the world. Like we don't, yes, these celebrities do, like you're saying, their livelihood depends on it. But for like the average person, this is not where we get worth from. And I think trying to help kind of understand and disentangle, like there are other issues at play here. We're all living in this very like consumerist culture where we're being sold a bunch of stuff. Like how can we kind of separate our own worth from what's kind of happening around us and how we're sort of pulled into these experiences of wanting to lose weight? Like, why is that happening? I think getting really critical, helping people get critical is what I like to see. But I also have the benefit of not being online. Like I get to have really nuanced conversations with people, for a 50-minute session. So like that's where we get to do that work. But I do think that, just getting a snapshot of the online rhetoric is really scary, and it can feel very like, oh, so now we're just doing this like 90s shaming about bodies just in a different way. That's not helping anyone.
Yeah, it's so interesting. One thing I'm thinking about a lot because I have done a bunch of reporting on GLP-1s is just how much more accessible it is for young women to get thin. Like there is literally, if you can afford it, and it is becoming more affordable, a pill you can take, to lose weight and maintain thinness. So a lot of the conversations I have with young women they're actively just trying to avoid going on a GLP-1 because everyone around them is on it. And even if they're not, they don't need it for medical reasons or they're not obese, they're going, well, why not? Like, I'm going to get a hotter boyfriend. I'm going to, be treated better on my cheerleading team. I'm going to fit in better with my friends. Like it is, it's never been easier to be thin, I think. And so that, I bring that up just to say, add a layer of why I think we need to be talking about this, because there's such a force that we have to sort of push back against right now. And I guess the way I think about it is from a therapy perspective, like in my own life, where I've been taught, like, talk about your feelings, talk about how you feel. So I actually love to see people say, I'm worried. I think that's so much better than you look nasty, whatever sort of insult they're just going to sling. It feels so much more productive to lead with emotion. Oh, I feel scared
Well, it's like an
seeing
iMessage also, to take it back
an
to like
iMessage
elementary
also.
school conflict resolution.
Yes,
But yeah,
it
like saying
feels,
like I feel instead of
yeah.
placing it on somebody else.
Yeah, it just feels like it brings down, even online in comment sections, it makes it just turns the heat down. So
Yeah.
I think being personal I love seeing people who have struggled with their body in ways telling those stories. I think so much of body pressure is like something we deal with in silence,
Hmm.
and we don't talk about, we don't share, we don't connect. So I think that can be a really positive thing.
Yeah, feelings over judgment. I mean, even just the like, we're talking about how to sort of communicate with each other in these comments, because that's where people, are online. That's, or even in
Hmm.
real life, right? When we're having conversations about these things, because also these conversations are being had in group chats.
Yeah.
They are being had over drinks. They are being had over brunch. It's this is something that everybody's talking about, at least
Hmm.
among a lot of the women that I know. This is coming up.
100%.
But also, we've all seen over the years like how damaging it can be for a lot of these women in question, a lot of these celebrity women. Like these girls, some of these girls had real deal nervous breakdowns, over the way people have talked about and spoken about their bodies. It actually, something that really drove home for me sort of how, um, I don't know. I think how much more careful we could all be when kind of engaging in these conversations. Is this movie? I don't know if either one of you have seen it. It's really good, and I loved it, and I hope other people see it. It's called Maddie's Secret, written and directed by and also starring the comedian John Early, and he plays this character named Maddie. She's a food influencer who makes these videos online, like recipes, cooking videos, and she gets fat shamed like in the comments of the videos, and it ends up triggering her, like, this, eating disorder that she had dealt with when she was younger. And it's interesting. I mean, the movie's interesting on a lot of levels. Like, John is this man who's playing Maddie as a woman. It was like, by having a man play this character, whether that was the intent or not, it created a situation where I don't know. It almost made the abuse even more plain, because it wasn't like, I don't, the audience doesn't get the opportunity to sit there and think like, well, she's not that pretty, or she's not that perfect, or she's not that thin, which is what they do, right? In movies like this a lot of the time. Yeah, it was really interesting, and it really made me think a lot. Just how pervasive, and like just how sort of primed we are to sort of judge, obviously famous women's bodies, but to a certain degree, it's a part of our social training to sort of judge each other's bodies and everyday women's bodies like this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially since, we're not just talking about celebrities because we're living through this time period. There's influencers. They aren't that famous, right? Like a lot, they might have a lot of followers, but they're often
They may
very
not have the
niche.
money and like
They
the
may not have
structure
the
of
money.
people to insulate them from
Right,
these sorts
but
of
they're still
comments.
being judged by millions of people, and there's that effect. And I think, and maybe this is too much to ask, I won't say I'm the most sympathetic to celebrities in general, but I do think it's like, say something if you can, because I think humanizing yourself, even Kelly Osbourne saying, I think she made a video after that saying, guys, I'm grieving, her dad had just died, how does grief play into your eating habits, whatever it is. I think sometimes the silence causes people to just fill in the gap with the nastiest,
Mm.
worst assumptions. And I really like Ariana Grande, I think, did this years ago too, not recently, but went online and sort of addressed the impacts. And I think I need to be reminded the toll that this takes on celebrities, because it's very easy in this day and age of income inequality to just be like, these are rich women. They are making little girls want to have eating disorders and like gain some weight, right? Like there's a part of
Hmm.
me that wants to go there and just sort of be angry and like, guys, be responsible. But Brittany, I love that you're bringing in the empathy of like, no, their money making is tied to, what their bodies look like. They are real
Yeah.
people. And I think, they have platforms now. They don't need to wait for the media to ask them to do an interview. They can hop online and talk about the impact.
I wonder. I mean, we're in such a different place now, right now in the 2020s, post COVID, post Ozempic, post GLP-1. Then we were like 10 years ago in the 2010s when it felt like we were kind of like in the bosom of the body positivity movement. Like, I don't know, in a lot of ways, our current moment feels like a pendulum swing away from all that. I wonder, like, how might our language and understanding of what many people are considering extreme thinness, like, how has that changed in the years since the body positivity movement?
Well, I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about the need to talk about our anger, like maybe in safe places, in maybe in real life, interpersonally with people we trust, about things like that. Like we had a moment where we were seeing more diversity. It felt safer and to move through the world in a different body, and to have those conversations about like, I'm mad that that went away. I think there's this assumption that this era of thinness is like here to stay. I don't move through the world thinking it has to stay in my personal circle. Like I can reject these norms. I don't have to just ascribe to, oh, this is just how it is. I think it's dangerous when we kind of have that attitude. And I think people are mad about the fact that there was a break in the clouds. Like it felt like there was some safety. And I think it's important to be able to talk freely about that anger. I think it gets redirected towards these celebrities, unfortunately, because they're sort of the ones who are that we see. They're the most visible. And we sort of assume that they're the ones who are selling us this bill of goods. It's not them. I mean, I think they're just products of a bigger system. And so I do think it's really important to be able to have freely speak with people in ways that reflects the real emotion there.
I think in a lot of ways, like what we're talking about, I think with this conversation is like, we have merged like our understanding of healthy with a specific body type or a specific like look of a body. Yeah. Why do you think we place so much emphasis on visual interpretations of what we assume health is?
Oh, I mean, the wellness industry, right? That's like some $1 trillion industry. I mean, I think that industry since COVID even has changed so dramatically. And like you're talking about influencers, and that world has shifted so dramatically, and it's all about visuals. I mean, it's really disturbing. Health at every size is a very I thought it went mainstream for a minute there, but the idea that we're not what we look like. Our health is not, BMI is a terrible indicator of health. We know that. But yeah, I think it's shiny. It's aesthetically, it kind of, it's just what we're used to. Diet culture has doubled down recently. So I just think that we've grown so much more accustomed to that message being very closely connected to health. And I think for a moment, it was really being challenged. And I don't think it's being challenged right now. And if anything, it's being challenged in this other way of like, well, that thinness is bad. That's not the good thinness. It's this other kind of like, it's the sculpt that you're describing. That thinness is the good thinness. Like, it's so messed up. I mean, we've lost the plot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's complicated to think about, but I just go back to it's all so accessible, whether we're talking about the ability to lose weight or to, freeze our faces. Like all of this is so mainstream. These aren't rarefied procedures of A-list celebrities. This is now an expectation that you're a 40-year-old woman, you want to lose weight, go on a GLP-1, get Botox, get some sculpting done. There's so many. I can walk 5 minutes and go to a med spa on my lunch break and get some of these procedures. And they're expensive, but if they're not they're becoming cheaper. As they become more mainstream, it drives the price down. So I just think as more people do it, and it's not just celebrities you see, it's your sister, it's your neighbor, it's your colleague. and it's the influencers, and it's the celebrities. It's a hard force to resist.
No, I mean, yeah, like you said, it's not like you can just throw your phone in the ocean and think this will never come up again. Like, it's
And
really
listen,
pervasive.
like, to get a little personal, I'm a year and a half postpartum now, gained weight after having a kid. Very normal thing. Really hard for me to lose in a non-GLP-1 era. It's more easy to accept. Okay, listen, I'm 40. I don't have time to work out, eat well. I'm a new mom. Now
Yeah.
I'm thinking, am I supposed to be going on Wegovy? Like, I could,
Yeah.
right? It's there. And this
Yeah.
is me who's like feminist, writing for a progressive women's magazine, someone who thinks critically about these issues. If I'm feeling that temptation, what is a teenage girl going into college feeling when someone writes something nasty about her on social media? It's so tough.
You Angelina, you spoke with, like, you spoke with young women who are trying to navigate this sort of new world that we're in now, which maybe to them it doesn't necessarily feel like a new world, right? Because this is like the world that they're like coming up in. But we're in this place now where like we have this increasing availability of GLP-1s for weight loss. In the past, I'm really glad you brought this up. In the past, if you couldn't lose the weight, you might just go, it is what it is. And that does feel like a missing table leg right now in this entire conversation. How do you see this shaping up for young women?
I think it's awful. I think right now what I'm hearing from young women is they're taking GLP-1s, for example, in secret because they don't want the other girls to know they've lost weight by taking GLP-1s. And so what I'm trying to do...
It's not just about being thin, it's also about doing it in a certain
the
way.
right way. And like, I really think the most dangerous thing right now is the shame around the thinness, the lengths people are going to be thin. And that's where we're going to see people, get really sick, if not worse. Like, we need to be at least shining some light on the fact that basically anyone can have access to these drugs that are not meant for short-term weight loss and not really meant for young women. And so let's talk about what they are. Let's talk about what it's doing to your body. Let's talk about why you're taking them. Let's just name it. Like, let's just say it's tempting. It's there. We can't look away.
I think the intentionality piece is something that I keep wanting to like chime in and talk about too, is the idea that if people at least get in touch with their intention, it helps slow down the train. Like, I think, I've seen all of this stuff in my practice too, that there's secretive behaviors, there's sharing with roommates and all these different really dangerous behaviors. And how can people start to get in touch with like, what's the goal here? Like, to what end am I going to be on a GLP-1 if I'm, 25 and wanting to lose 3 pounds? I think of the Mean Girls, like, I got to lose 3 pounds.
I just want to lose 3 pounds.
Yeah. And getting people to like get really in touch with, okay, this harm reduction, sure. Like, how can I be talking about this more, reduce the shame, and also be more intentional about like, what am I doing here? Is there an end goal? I think about safety, people wanting to feel better in the world. Like, it's a hard world out there, and things are, it's pretty bleak. There's always something happening, doom scrolling, all the things that we're exposed to. And so, to have something that feels like I have a point of safety in the world or control, I get it. And like, it's going to aid you in some kind of journey for a hot minute. It's not the worst thing in the world, sure. And it's like not going to really be a long-term strategy for feeling better.
It seems like we will continue to see this trend of thinner and thinner bodies on red carpets, on world tours, and on our TV and film screens. So how should we talk about this? Like, what can we say to ourselves, to each other, and most importantly, how can we talk about this with the young people in our lives?
Yeah, I think it's important. First of all, it's important to be talking about it in any way, shape, or form. So I think if people are talking about it, that's great. If there's nuance, that's better. If people are able to name that there's a system of diet culture in the mix, that's even better. Being able to talk about the bigger systemic issues that are really disheartening. Like, yeah, it's not going away. Like you, Angelina, you've said it's never been easier to get thin. Like that's terrifying. To be able to talk about the fears, I think if parents are being able to talk about that, that's huge. There's a trickle down in the same way that there's a trickle down, just seeing these images. There can be a trickle down in the sense of like, what are we going to do here? How can we introduce this conversation, in schools and in groups of young women? And so I think being able to have nuanced conversations that include diet culture and how dangerous that world is, to me, is really important.
Yeah. And I have, I don't obviously come at this from a clinical standpoint. I'm not an expert. Vanessa has said so many helpful things in terms of how to have these conversations. I can speak to for myself. This is a little woo-woo and a little squishy, but I lately have just been trying to like lean into pleasure, in a sort of, I think thinness and GLP-1s in particular, we know that a side effect is like, for some people can be just losing desire. I think a colleague of mine wrote a great piece called Life in Beige about her experience on GLP-1s. And it's just sort of, everything's turned down. And so to counter that in my own life, I've been trying to like, this pizza, this beautiful day, like just sort of pleasure how nice it is to be human, to give into indulgence, just as like a life philosophy. And then also just to, as I get older, to get pleasure in other aspects of my life. Oh, I wrote such a great piece. I'm so happy about that. Oh, I'm having such a nice time as a mother. Like just to shift the focus, as a young woman, the focus was so much on my body, my makeup, I was so attuned. Oh, it's 12 p.m. I have to reapply. It was like it really ruled my life. Beauty standards, body standards, all of this. And I do, as I get older, I'm getting so much joy out of rebelling against that and saying like, I'm funnier, I'm more confident, I like myself more, I think I'm a cool mom. Like just sort of just getting pleasure in other ways than my jean size, which has gone up.
No, I mean that's beautiful. I mean that's a very it's not easy what you're describing, but it's a not worthy easy endeavor. It's a worthy
It's not
endeavor.
easy. It's not easy, and I'm old. I'm 40, and it's taken a long time to even be able to say those words. But I think even just the slightest reframe in moments can help.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think that can be an anecdote for sure. I also think about telling that to an 18-year-old feels very different than a 25-year-old and a 30-year-old. I think as we move through life, we can start to create some distance between these beauty standards and our self-worth. I think it's harder when people move through the world as influencers, capturing everything they possibly can. And they do feel like I had this thought, I was thinking like, I'm not a celebrity. Like, okay, who cares what but I think some like people are more celebrities than they've ever been, right? There's just more of an audience.
More. Yeah. For the average person than there ever has been before.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Oh my gosh. I really appreciate this conversation so much. Vanessa, Angelina, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brittany. It's such a pleasure.